Imagine that tomorrow, on every news outlet in the world, at the same time, an announcement is made. Not of a war, nor of an election. The announcement is that we are not alone, that they are here and they have always been, and that governments knew. Now tell me, what would that do to everything you believe in, considering your worldview and what you consider real? The movie Disclosure Day has just been released and puts exactly this question at the center of the screen. It's not a sci-fi movie with spaceships and laser beams. Instead, the film narrates the cover-up that governments carry out regarding this issue. They know everything and hide it from the population. This movie talks about the psychological impact of a revelation that would completely destroy the model of reality that humanity has built over centuries. Director Steven Spielberg publicly stated that the script was influenced by real events, real documents, and real secret government programs. But here is the question that no one is talking about. What if the greatest danger isn't exactly that they exist, but rather that someone really wants you to believe they exist? In this video, we are going to peel back this issue layer by layer, and by the end, you will have a perspective that most people will never hear anywhere else. So stay until the end, because the last layer is the one that changes everything. There is a very specific pattern that has been adopted over the last few decades. Governments that for years denied any anomalous phenomena in the skies or the existence of beings from other planets suddenly start releasing information. Slowly, in a controlled manner. As if they want you to know, but only as much as they decide you're allowed to know. For example, the Pentagon started releasing videos of unidentified objects. The US Congress has been holding public hearings on this subject. Former military personnel talk about it openly. Documents are being declassified by the government. Everything very organized. Everything very, shall we say, convenient. But think with me. If you were an authority hiding information capable of changing the course of society and suddenly decided to reveal it, would you do it in a chaotic or a controlled way? Surely you answered in a controlled way. So the question we must ask is not just what they are revealing, but why only now, and what they want you to do with this information. There are those who analyze this movement as a psychological preparation. A gradual acclimatization of the population to a certain idea, so that when the right moment arrives, humanity is already conditioned to accept it. But to accept what, exactly? We don't know. However, for those who pay attention, the architecture of the process is clear. So what we have so far is not necessarily evidence of extraterrestrial life. What we have is evidence that someone wants you to believe in this idea, and that is completely different. But if it's not beings from other planets, what could be behind these real phenomena that pilots, military personnel, witnesses, and cameras record around the world? Because the phenomena exist. No one is denying that. The question is, what are these phenomena? On this issue, there is a possibility that almost no one touches upon. Not because it's irrational, but because it is deeply unsettling. What if these phenomena don't come from space, but from another dimension? Ancient texts and practically every great human culture, Egyptian, Sumerian, Greek, Hebrew, describe beings that transit between worlds, that appear and disappear, operating beyond the laws of physics as we know them. They are called gods, spirits, messengers, or guardians. Modern science itself, with its advances in fields like quantum physics and string theory, no longer completely rules out the possibility of dimensions beyond the ones we perceive. So the question becomes something else. What inhabits these dimensions? And even more importantly, which of these beings have access to our plane of existence, and with what intention? The ancient texts that survived the test of time, not those written yesterday, but the ones that have endured for millennia, make a very clear distinction. There are beings of light, messengers who operate in favor of humanity. And there are the others, the ones who deceive, who disguise themselves, who imitate. The difference between these two categories is not necessarily in their appearance, but in the agenda behind their actions. A being that genuinely came to help does not need to create confusion. It does not need to operate in secrecy. It does not need to manipulate perceptions. Deception, by definition, requires that the victim does not realize they are being deceived. And here we arrive at something that might sound disturbing. What if this whole narrative of extraterrestrials arriving to save humanity or to invade planet Earth is exactly the kind of deception that these ancient texts described with stunning precision, thousands of years before Hollywood even existed? There is one of these texts that describes in disturbing detail events that will happen at the end of human history. This text wasn't written yesterday, nor was it written by a Hollywood screenwriter. And among the things it describes, there is something that makes anyone who studies this topic stop and reflect. This text speaks about the rise of an authority that will appear at the end of times, operating signs, wonders, and miracles. An authority that will emerge with the appearance of legitimacy, with a speech of peace, unity, and solutions to humanity's problems. And the texts themselves state that it would deceive, if possible, even those who believe they are prepared not to be deceived. Now think about the scenario that is being built: decades of psychological conditioning, governments releasing information in a gradual and controlled manner, a pop culture saturated with narratives about extraterrestrial contact, a humanity increasingly receptive to the idea that there are intelligences superior to our own, capable of intervening in human problems and offering answers to the world's dilemmas. And then, at some point, this authority appears. It performs signs. It works wonders. It demonstrates capabilities that seem to defy everything we know. Perhaps it uses technology so advanced that it seems supernatural, and then it makes a simple claim. I came from beyond what you know. I came from another dimension. I came to bring the answers you are looking for. And concludes, follow me. What would your reaction be faced with this scenario? Even more importantly, what would be the reaction of a humanity that spent decades being prepared for this very moment? The ancient texts do not offer paranoia. They offer discernment. They teach us to ask the questions most people fail to ask. Where does this come from? What is the agenda behind it? What is being asked in return? Because the true power of an illusion lies in the ability to convince people that it is real. And the true power of discernment lies in the ability to ask the question that nobody else is asking. But there is something even more important that needs to be said clearly. Because up until now, we have talked about what might be false. Now we need to talk about what, according to these same ancient texts, is absolutely real.
There is a distinction that the oldest texts consistently make. Beings belonging to other dimensions exist. This is recorded in practically every human tradition that has survived time. But there is a specific category of access to the human dimension that is described as legitimate. And there is everything else, which is described as intrusion. The difference does not lie in the ability to perform wonders. It lies in the origin, and in the submission to an order that transcends any created being. What these texts assert is that there is a creator who established the limits of what can pass between dimensions, and that any entity operating outside of these limits, no matter how impressive its appearance, no matter how convincing its message, is operating in violation. And the sign of violation is not the appearance, it is the demand. What is being asked of you? The abandonment of what you know to be true. Loyalty to a new narrative that replaces everything that came before? Faith in something that needs to impress in order to be accepted? Genuine truth does not need a show. It does not need holograms, ships, or signs in the skies. It has resisted for millennia without any of that. And it asserts something that no dimensional entity, no government, no psychological operation will ever be able to fake. That you were created. That this creation has a purpose. And that the Creator does not need exotic intermediaries to communicate with what was created. The final conflict, and the texts are explicit about this, will not be between countries. It will not be between races or ideologies. It will be between those who, in the face of the entire spectacle, maintain discernment, and those who, seduced by the extraordinary, surrender it.
So, here is the question I am going to leave you with at the end. If tomorrow an entity were to appear with inexplicable technologies, documented cures, and a message of unity for all of humanity, and this entity said it came from beyond to guide you into a new era, what would make you trust it? And even more importantly, what would make you distrust it? Because this might be one of the most important questions you will ever ask in your entire life. And the fact that you made it this far perhaps means that, on some level, you already realize that the spectacle being prepared might be bigger than any movie Hollywood has ever produced. The big question is, when this spectacle begins, will you just be watching it, or will you be able to see beyond it? And more importantly, when this spectacle begins, whose side will you be on? On the side of those who preserve discernment, or on the side of those who decided to surrender it in the face of the extraordinary? Leave a comment below with what you think about this. Do you believe we are heading toward a grand revelation? Do you think all of this is just speculation? Or do you understand that there is something deeper happening behind this narrative? I want to read your opinion, because this subject is far from over.